What's up, investors? It's the Russian dude. Due to absence of clear and definitive goals, modern warfare unfortunately tends to extend beyond any reasonable timeframes. In the past, the objectives were clear: capture this, defend that, fight here, arrive there, and so on. Today, the prevention of expansion of NATO, denazification, or the change of the entire ruling apparatus of another country is not something what can be summarized as a step-by-step plan. Because of this, the wars are fought for years with no clear end in sight. They might end as abruptly as they started, seemingly out of nowhere, or as a result of seemingly insignificant event. And because it is so hard to plan for the future during the ongoing conflict, especially for the citizens of involved countries, the people start to learn living in the new reality. The mindset of winning at all costs as soon as possible starts to evolve into the following: I hope the war does not come to my very own doorstep, so that at least I can lead my routine life with no immediate danger to my life. I'm not saying that this is right or wrong mindset, but this is what it is. It happens on both sides of the border, in Russia as well as in Ukraine. And while Ukrainians do have the support of the West, meaning that if the situation gets really bad, the Western leaders might increase the military assistance just to prevent Ukraine from collapsing. Russia, on the other hand, primarily relies on itself and hopes to crumble Ukrainians thanks to its dominance of territory, the human capital and the number of soldiers, the strength of military and the economy. But nevertheless, it is nowhere near close to the combined war efforts of Ukrainians and the West. And without a doubt, the regime of Putin most certainly started feeling the dire consequences of war long time ago. The pool of potential war volunteers is rapidly running out. The soldiers along the front lines perish at record pace, and the collapse of the economy has been initiated. So guys, today, let's talk about the dead-end situation that Putin is facing. How long can it potentially last, and what can be the future of Russia? Both Russians and Ukrainians, as well as the international community, are gradually coming to terms with the fact that the present state of conflict is not a temporary deviation, but instead is a long-term reality. Recent statements and actions by both countries and their respective allies indicate a collective acknowledgement that the hostilities may continue unchanged for another year or even longer. This shift in perception reflects a broader understanding that the situation is unlikely to resolve quickly and that the preparations must be made for sustained engagement. The very approach and vision of war must change. The possibility of the conflict intensifying, drawing in new participants, or extending further into Europe cannot be dismissed either. However, it appears increasingly improbable that the opposing forces, comprising of up to 3 million troops combined, will simply disengage. Most of us wish the war ended next day. All of us wish it ends on Ukrainian terms. But just think about the impossibility of both armies just simultaneously laying down their arms and just freezing their positions along the front lines, not expecting to do or to face any provocations. We can only wish, but it will not happen like this. Even if there are real talks about peace negotiations, it will still take weeks and months to just prepare for the very first negotiations. And then there is a huge chance that they will fail, since both sides want completely the opposite concessions. The next step would be either to prepare for the next talks and evaluate your demands, or the negotiations will fail so bad that the countries will not speak to each other for another year or so, unless there is a significant event, a statement, or a military action, such as the liberation or a capture of a huge territory. The possibility of the situation just changing by itself is unfortunately close to zero. Something has to happen before things start to change. Both countries, its leaders, soldiers, and people understand it. That's why they are forced to learn living in this new reality, when you don't know when the war will be over. And like the very first months of war, people even stop trying to predict when the hostilities end. Governments and institutions must adapt to the realities of an extended conflict, balancing military commitments with domestic stability. The recognition of this new global reality emphasizes the importance of strategic planning and international cooperation in navigating the complexities ahead. All this means that you have to effectively communicate with powerful nations and cooperate with them, which is only the case for Ukraine here. Russia's partners, such as North Korea, Iran or Venezuela, can barely match the combined assistance of the West. And even though the conflict might seem indefinite, sooner or later it will end. Now let's talk about how the regime of Putin is trying to adjust, but so far it does not look like that he is succeeding, neither in terms of military nor the economy. But first, please allow me to quickly mention that today is the very last day of our Black Friday promotion for our merchandise on therussiandude.com. Hoodies, t-shirts, hats, shorts, phone cases, mugs, everything is 20% off. If you ever thought about buying anything from our store, today is the last and best day to do so. Money goes towards the channel, so it is an extraordinary good way to support my work and get something for yourself or as a present. Winter holidays are coming very soon. Please hurry up, the promotion ends today. Thank you so much, and now let's continue. In response to the prolonged nature of the conflict, the Russian government has implemented significant changes to its military recruitment and retention strategies. President Vladimir Putin recently signed legislation for giving debts of up to 10 million rubles, approximately $96,000, for individuals who commit to military contracts. And yes, this is in addition to $30,000 sign-up bonuses and $2,000 to $3,000 monthly salaries. Basically, if signing up a contract and receiving life-changing money was not enough, now it should be absolutely clear that every last gambling addict who lost every ruble of his own savings and the savings of his family can now sign a contract with the Ministry of Defense, and all of his debts will be forgiven. This might sound attractive for these people, but what about the businesses and other folks who expect to get money back from this guy? Without a doubt, effectively erasing the whole meaning of the word debt, Putin is annihilating the Russian economy even further. We'll talk more about the economy in the next chapter. At the same time, this new initiative to cancel a person's debt right after signing the military contract also shows that the regime of Putin understands the limitations of traditional recruitment methods. Contract soldiers represent a finite resource, and the government recognizes that simply increasing financial incentives may not be enough to maintain troops level indefinitely. Those who did not want to sell their lives for $30,000 will most likely not do it for $40,000 either. So instead, they started focusing on financially desperate people, who might be already harassed by the debt collectors and who equally fear for their lives inside their own country. So they think that I'll just give it a chance, go to Ukraine, at least my debts will be paid. The emphasis on voluntarily enlistment through substantial incentives allows the government to sustain its military operations while minimizing domestic unrest. But this approach also raises concerns about the future integration of these soldiers into the society. Many recruits may return home with limited employment opportunities, depleted financial resources, and lasting physical or psychological injuries. These people will require government money long after they return from Ukraine. So we may very well assume that such large sums of money can only be offered if the government expects that most of Russian soldiers will never return from the war. As you can see, current soldiers along the front lines, they are being eliminated at a record pace, and in the meantime the pool of potential war volunteers is also rapidly running out. The prolonged conflict also puts significant pressure on Russia's economy, with the central bank openly acknowledging the fragility of the nation's financial stability. Temporary measures that once mitigated economic downturns are losing their efficiency, and traditional tools like adjusting the interest rates no longer yield the desired outcomes. Inflation is on the rise, and the ruble continues to weaken, signaling a deeper systemic issues that transcend monetary policy adjustments. A critical factor contributing to these economic challenges is the substantial government spending on military operations. The commitment to sustain conflict requires considerable financial resources, diverting funds from other vital sectors and limiting opportunities for economic diversification and growth. Aggressive recruitment campaigns deplete the labor force in productive industries, while restrictive policies on migrant labor makes the situation with the workforce shortages even worse. While a complete economic collapse is unlikely, but not impossible, in a market or partially market-based economy, the trajectory points towards prolonged stagnation and decreased quality of life for many, if not most, Russians. Those not directly benefiting from wartime industries or government spending may bear the worst consequences of these economic hardships, facing diminishing incomes and rising costs of living. And then, there is obviously another pretty stupid decision by Putin we spoke about several minutes ago. The decision to cancel the entire idea of debt and owing money to somebody. So, when there is a realization that you can take millions of rubles and just never give it back, some people will definitely take severe advantage of this system. 10 million rubles, almost $100,000 in debt, can be forgiven if you simply sign a military contract. I'm almost certain that some people might even use some of this money to pay a bribe to the military representatives so that they are sent somewhere safe in Ukraine, pocketing the rest of the money and officially not having to return a single ruble back. Financial institutions will stop giving out loans altogether. And this will affect everyone, both people who want to take advantage of the system, regular first-time home buyers, and families with kids. What they might do is to increase the rates even further, something like 50%, just to cover their losses from those people who took the money and disappeared in Ukraine. And I do not need to be the head of the Central Bank of Russia to understand that this will cause hyperinflation and the total destruction of the financial system. I hope you guys see it too. The prolonged conflict has significant implications on Russia and beyond its borders, reshaping geopolitical dynamics and promoting reassessments of the international strategies. The allies of Ukraine are increasingly willing to show more direct forms of involvement, including the deliveries of previously so-called prohibited weapons, allowing the strikes inside Russia, and even the potential deployment of private military companies. Discussions that once seemed speculative are gaining traction, suggesting that a possible escalation might potentially go beyond Russian-Ukrainian borders. Domestically, Russia is experiencing a consolidation of power, marked by a total prohibition of dissent. Putin's critics are silenced through imprisonment, exile, or worse. The state 24/7 brainwashes the people that the current critical situation is normal, and everything goes according to the plan. So when bad things do start to happen, there will be chaos and people will be completely disoriented. Will Putin come to their aid? Absolutely not. Even the recent reshuffle within the defense ministry ended up the entire apparatus to be filled with Putin pleasers and yes-sayers. Bad news are apparently illegal in Russia, especially if they are true. This is obviously not healthy. The more you lie, the further you distance yourself from the truth, until you no longer remember what was right or what was wrong, and you can no longer tell the difference between the two. As we say in Russia, the lie always finds a way to the surface, and then it explodes in your face. The regime of Putin lives in its own world, where everything is bright, clean and possible. But it is completely vulnerable when things inevitably do not go according to master plan. Putin wanted to turn this war into the war exhaustion, but it looks like that he did not count that it can be his country, which will be depleted of all the resources first. Well, there you have it, guys. If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe to my channel for more videos like this. Don't forget about the Black Friday promotion for every single piece of merch you find on therussiandude.com. Have a good weekend, happy past Thanksgiving, and see you on Tuesday.
We won't succumb to their tricks, the facade they try to sell. Their twisted words and feeble claims on us all they cannot quell. We see through their lies, their feeble attempts to sway.